This show is part of One Place, a daily network of focused briefings across the stories people follow most. Welcome to our daily roundup. I'm host, and joining me is host B. We have a lot of heavy ground to cover today, from a tragic deposition shooting to a high-stakes legal battle involving the Department of Justice.
That's right. Here is what we're tracking. A Nevada family faces a conspiracy lawsuit after a deadly deposition shooting. An Iowa woman is accused of using drug-laced lasagna to attempt to cause a miscarriage. A Texas man is charged with holding his disabled wife captive for 5 years in their luxury home. A Georgia mother allegedly admitted to suffocating 2 of her infants years apart. Michigan investigators move forward with a murder case, despite never finding a body. A former college cheerleader is indicted for manslaughter after her newborn was found in a closet. A student speaks out after a high school prank tragically resulted in a teacher's death. A Wisconsin man is in custody after allegedly stabbing his grandmother and fleeing the state. An NYPD chief is being hailed as a hero after chasing down a bomb suspect at a protest. And Smartmatic claims the Department of Justice is targeting them in a vindictive prosecution.
We begin with a truly harrowing update out of Nevada, where a new lawsuit claims a family knew a deadly ambush was coming and did nothing to stop it.
This stems from the April 2024 double murder-suicide during a child custody deposition in Las Vegas. Attorney Joseph Houston shot and killed Dennis Prince and his wife, Ashley Prince, before turning the gun on himself. Now, a negligence lawsuit filed on behalf of Dennis's young son Parker claims that Joseph's son Dylan Houston and his mother Catherine were part of a conspiracy. The filing points to chilling messages Dylan allegedly sent to the victims, including one that said, "I don't want to see you unless you're in a casket." The lawsuit argues these weren't just idle threats, but evidence of a pre-planned execution that the family was fully aware of.
The details regarding Catherine Houston's behavior during the shooting are particularly disturbing. According to the complaint, when her husband opened fire, she simply left the room and never checked on the victims or her husband, even after he killed himself. The lawsuit also alleges she quickly transferred 3 properties into her name through a trust shortly after the murders. It's a staggering allegation of conscious disregard for criminal activity. The plaintiffs are seeking damages in excess of $15,000 for each of the 7 causes of action, including wrongful death and intentional infliction of emotional distress, as they seek justice for a child who lost his father in such a violent, public way.
Now let's shift to a bizarre and frightening case in Iowa involving a family-sized tray of lasagna.
36-year-old Amberdina Snow is facing multiple felony charges after allegedly delivering a lasagna laced with oxycodone to a pregnant woman's family. Authorities in Wenatchee County say the goal was to induce a miscarriage. This wasn't just a heat-of-the-moment act. Investigators say they found electronic communications and search history on Snow's phone that showed she and an unnamed co-conspirator planned this well in advance. The victim had no idea the food was tainted, and the presence of the controlled substance was later confirmed by the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation Laboratory. It's a terrifying example of how someone could use something as mundane as a meal as a weapon.
Snow is currently being held on a $100,000 cash bond. What makes this even more tragic is that Snow reportedly shares custody of a child with someone related to the victim. Even more disturbing, that juvenile child was apparently aware of the plan and was opposed to it. Snow is facing a long list of charges, including attempted non-consensual termination of a pregnancy and child endangerment. Her preliminary hearing is set for March 23rd. The investigation is still ongoing, especially regarding the co-conspirator who has not yet been charged. But the evidence gathered from the digital forensics seems to paint a very clear picture of a calculated, malicious attempt to end a pregnancy.
Turning our attention to Texas, where a man is accused of a shocking level of domestic cruelty.
James Earl Johnson, a 46-year-old man from Houston, was arrested after his disabled wife managed to call 911 using a phone he had accidentally left in her room. For 5 years, prosecutors say, Johnson kept her locked inside a bedroom in their $1 million home, with almost no contact with the outside world. The conditions were reportedly horrific. He allegedly starved her, sometimes leaving her with just 1 egg to eat for the entire day. When she finally made that emergency call, Johnson allegedly caught her, struck her, and tried to end the call before police could intervene. It is heartbreaking to think that this was happening in a luxury neighborhood while their children were in the house.
What's even more frustrating is that there were missed opportunities to save her. Police had been called to the home back in November, but the victim and her children had been instructed not to speak to the officers, so no report was filed at that time. Now that she's safe and receiving medical care, Johnson has been released on a $50,000 bond with a GPS monitor. He's facing charges of injury to a disabled individual and abandonment. The victim's adult son has declined to comment on her specific condition, But the fact that she was held for half a decade under such restrictive and abusive conditions is something the community is still trying to process before his next court date on March 18th.
In another disturbing case involving family violence, we look at the charges against a Georgia mother.
Dakota Taylor, who is only 21, is accused of killing two of her infant sons, Micah and Caleb, in incidents that happened years apart. Micah died in 2021 when he was just 7 months old, and Caleb died in early 2025 at 8 months. Investigators say Taylor eventually admitted to suffocating both children. In Micah's case, his father told police that Taylor admitted to holding a mask over the baby's face until he stopped breathing. Her own half-sister gave a similar account, saying Taylor described pinching the baby's nose until he turned colors. It's a pattern of behavior that apparently started even earlier, with reports that she had previously threatened her two daughters with a knife when she was a teenager.
The details from the Georgia Division of Family and Children's Services are quite damning. She was deemed a danger to her daughters, who were eventually adopted, but she was still able to have more children. After Caleb's death, an inmate told investigators that Taylor admitted she knew the baby was dead before she even drove him to a relative's house. During her recent bond hearing, her demeanor was described as nonchalant, which matches the body camera footage from the first death in 2021. While she was granted bond in one county, she remains held without bond in DeKalb County, as the legal process moves toward her next appearance in April. It's a case that raises massive questions about the safety nets meant to protect vulnerable children.
Moving on to a long-running mystery in Michigan that has finally seen a major breakthrough in court.
The case of Dee Warner has captivated Lenawee County since she vanished on a spring morning in 2021. Her husband, Dale Warner, has now been charged with her murder, even though her body has never been found. For years, Dee's children and her brother, Greg Hardy, have fought to keep the investigation alive, even hiring private investigator Billy Little to pressure the authorities. Dale's story was always full of holes. He claimed she left intentionally, leaving behind a $40,000 wedding ring and taking a secret phone he supposedly knew about. But her family insisted she would never leave her young daughter, Lena, and pointed to the fact that all her vehicles remained at the farm. They never gave up, even putting up a billboard that sarcastically said, "Help Dale find Dee."
The preliminary hearing that began recently is a huge step for the family. We've heard testimony about the couple's crumbling marriage and the financial tensions between their various businesses. Prosecutors are building a case based on the absence of evidence of her being alive. No bank activity, no phone usage, and no travel. Dale allegedly told police she had been stealing money from the business, but there's no evidence to support that. Instead, the family believes Dale killed her after she told him she wanted a divorce and intended to sell their trucking company. It's a difficult task to prove murder without a body, but the Michigan State Police and the family are determined to see this through to a conviction, regardless of how long it takes.
Meanwhile, in Kentucky, a former college cheerleader is facing a serious new indictment.
Laken Snelling, a 22-year-old former member of the University of Kentucky cheer stunt team, has been indicted for first-degree manslaughter. This follows the discovery of her newborn infant's body, which was found wrapped in trash bags in her closet back in August. Her roommates told police they heard loud noises coming from her room for an hour, noises so violent they knocked a picture off the wall. Snelling initially told them she had just passed out from not eating, but when they went into her room later, they found a blood-soaked towel and the baby. It's a shocking set of circumstances for someone who was a prominent student-athlete at the time.
Snelling's defense seems to center on a claim of extreme emotional disturbance. She told investigators that the baby fell to the floor during birth and wasn't breathing, and that she eventually fell asleep on top of the infant. When she woke up and saw the baby was purple, she allegedly wrapped it up like a burrito for comfort. The indictment, however, suggests that she intentionally abused the infant, leading to its death. She's also facing charges for abuse of a corpse and tampering with physical evidence. She's been out on bond, living with her parents in Tennessee. But this new manslaughter charge significantly raises the stakes for her upcoming arraignment on April 10th. The community is still reeling from the details of how this was hidden from those living right in the same suite.
We also have a tragic update on a high school prank that turned fatal in Georgia.
Jaden Ryden Wallace, a high school student, is speaking out after being charged with vehicular homicide in the death of his beloved coach and teacher, Jason Hughes. The incident happened during a prank war where students were rolling the teacher's trees with toilet paper. As the students were driving away, Coach Hughes reportedly ran out to catch them, but he slipped on the wet road and fell directly into the path of the vehicle Wallace was driving. It's a nightmare scenario where a harmless tradition ended in a devastating loss. Wallace has pledged to live the rest of his life in a way that honors Hughes' memory. and his parents have expressed their deep remorse for the tragedy that has shaken the North Hall community.
What makes this story unique is the reaction from the victim's family. Hughes's widow, Laura, has been incredibly vocal in her support for the students. She has stated clearly that there was no confrontation and that her husband actually loved these kids and was excited to participate in the prank. She is actively pushing for the charges against all the students to be dropped, saying that ruining their lives would be the opposite of what her husband stood for as a mentor. Despite the school district's prior warnings about pranks going too far, the family maintains this was a freak accident with no malicious intent. It's a powerful testament to the impact Coach Hughes had that his own family is fighting to protect the boy who was behind the wheel.
In Wisconsin, a man is facing a homicide charge after a violent attack on his own grandmother.
Randy Jenks, 36, is accused of stabbing 75-year-old Patricia May Glenn to death in her home. After the attack, Jenks allegedly fled all the way to Utah, where he was eventually tracked down at an aunt's house. The discovery was made after family members requested a welfare check and found Glenn in a pool of blood. According to the criminal complaint, Jenks actually told his sister over the phone, "I stabbed Grandma in the living room." He later told his mother he did it because he was scared and claimed to police that his grandmother had pushed him too far. It's a tragic end to a situation where a family was already struggling with Jenks's declining mental health over the past year.
The legal process for extradition is now underway to bring Jenks back from Ogden, Utah to Waushara County. He's facing a charge of first-degree intentional homicide, which carries a mandatory life sentence in Wisconsin. His family had been trying to support him while he lived with his grandmother, but they clearly had no idea it would escalate to this level of violence. The community in the town of Mount Morris is mourning the loss of a woman who was a central figure in her family. As we wait for a court date to be scheduled, the focus remains on the motive and whether his mental health struggles will play a significant role in his defense. It's another reminder of the volatility that can exist within domestic settings when support systems are overwhelmed.
On a more heroic note, an NYPD chief is being recognized for his bravery during a dangerous confrontation.
NYPD Assistant Chief Aaron Edwards is being hailed as a hero after he leaped over a metal barricade to chase down a suspect who had allegedly thrown homemade bombs during a protest outside Gracie Mansion. The incident, which happened on March 7th, involved two suspects who authorities say were inspired by ISIS. Edwards, a 23-year veteran of the force, said his only thought was to catch the bad guy and protect the crowd. A photo of his athletic jump over the barrier has gone viral, with millions of views and even memes comparing him to Batman. Alongside Sergeant Luis Navarro, Edwards' quick reaction likely prevented a much larger tragedy during the clashing protests at the mayor's residence.
Edwards shared in a recent interview that his inspiration for joining the NYPD was watching the first responders during the September 11th attacks. That sense of duty clearly hasn't faded over his 2 decades of service. Commissioner Jessica Tisch praised the officers for their counterterrorism training, which Navarro said culminated in that single, high-stakes moment. The suspects, both teenagers from Pennsylvania, are now facing serious terrorism charges. It's a story that highlights the constant vigilance required by law enforcement in major cities, but also the human element of a chief who can still joke about his adrenaline-fueled jump while being laser-focused on public safety. It's rare to see such a positive spotlight on a split-second decision that truly made a difference.
Finally, we look at a major legal battle where Smartmatic is taking a stand against the federal government.
The voting technology company Smartmatic is claiming it is the victim of a vindictive and selective prosecution by the Department of Justice under the current administration. They argue that the recent bribery and money laundering charges against them are a direct retaliation for the defamation lawsuits they filed against MAGA allies following the 2020 election. Smartmatic points out that the DOJ chose not to prosecute these 2016-era claims during the previous administration, and only moved forward now that political motives have shifted. They are asking a judge to dismiss the case with prejudice, arguing that the prosecution is an unconstitutional attempt to punish them for defending their reputation against false claims that they helped rig the election for Joe Biden.
This is a complex legal maneuver, as Smartmatic is trying to establish a presumption of vindictiveness. They've cited other high-profile cases, including those involving James Comey and Letitia James, to show a pattern of the executive branch targeting perceived enemies. The company is also seeking discovery to uncover any communications between the White House and the DOJ regarding the charging decision. Meanwhile, the government maintains that the charges are based on legitimate evidence of corruption in the Philippines. With billions of dollars in potential damages on the line in their ongoing defamation suit against Fox News, the outcome of this criminal case could have massive ripple effects on the broader legal battles surrounding the 2020 election narrative. It's a high-stakes game of legal chess that we'll be watching closely.
That brings us to the end of today's briefing. We've covered a lot of ground, and these stories are far from over. We'll be here to provide updates as these cases move through the courts. Thanks for joining us today.
If you found this helpful, please make sure to follow the show so you don't miss our next daily update. We appreciate you listening and staying informed on the stories that matter. Until tomorrow, I'm host B, and we'll see you then.